In this video, we introduce writing requirements for papers in IT 2020. You are writing papers in this class to present your opinion. In presenting your opinion, you will be attempting to persuade your audience, which is your readers. To do that, you will be providing background, including a framing of the problem, or of the situation, or of the conundrum you're addressing. You might present both sides. Hopefully you'll present both sides. And you will present your opinion in the form of your life experiences, your research that you do, and any conclusions that you draw. Who will be reading your paper? Who is your audience? You may assume your paper will be read by people who are familiar with technology. You can use computer terms, you can use technical terms, and you can assume that your reader knows what those terms mean. You may choose to define some terms if you feel that they are a little bit obscure or specific to your topic, or based on your intuition, you think you need to explain them a little bit better. But if you use the word computer, if you use the word software, if you use the word copyright, if you use bits and bytes and gigabytes and gigahertz and terabytes, you can assume that your audience knows what those things mean. Do not assume that your audience knows the writing prompt. Do not assume that your reader has studied the writing prompt that you were given to write the paper. That should be built into the paper at the very beginning. The writing prompt should be part of your introduction to the paper. I expect you to put the writing prompt in your own words. I don't expect you to copy and paste it into the paper. I do expect you to provide it to the reader. That makes your paper stand alone. That doesn't require your reader to go find the writing prompt to know why they are reading the paper. When you take a position, when you defend your opinion, you will provide support. Life experiences are great support, along with research that you do. Your research may be talking to people in fields of technology or other kinds of fields too. You may talk to lawyers, you may talk to accountants, you may talk to philosophers, you may talk to doctors, nurses. You may have a doctor in the family who has an opinion on the social liabilities of technology in operating rooms. You may have a nurse in the family who has an opinion on how to protect patient records. Those are all great authoritative sources. Do not simply go on the interweb and Google the writing prompt that you're given. You're expected to do more research than simply Googling or using Yahoo or Bing to find web references. When you write, do not use the word I. Do not start a sentence with I or you or we. We do not write in the first person. We do not write in the second person in this kind of paper. If you give an opinion, your reader will know it's your opinion unless you've cited it or you've quoted it from a source. If you don't follow these rules, if you insist on writing in the first person or the second person, your paper will be sent back to you, there will be points deducted, and you will be expected to revise it. Here is an example of the correct way and the incorrect way. In the incorrect example, the sentence starts with I. I think downloading copyrighted software is wrong because it's illegal. The thought is good, the opinion is there, but you're writing in the first person. This is not the way we write formal papers. We write them in the not first person form by just simply leaving out the I think. Easy enough to do. If you write downloading copyrighted software is wrong because it's illegal, I know that's you saying that. If you must refer to yourself, do it in a more general sense. For example, this author was ticketed or texting while driving, and this helped form the opinion that government has a role to play in digital safety. Now, I know you're the author, but you still resisted the urge to write in the first person, which is terrific. This is perfectly fine. This is acceptable writing in this format. The structure of a paper has a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning, you introduce the topic, which will probably include the writing prompt. You state your thesis. Your thesis meaning, I am going to assert that, or this paper asserts that, or this paper will demonstrate that. And then you move on to the middle. The middle is the body or the guts of the paper. It is by far the largest part of the paper. Provide some background information to bring the reader up to speed on what you're going to discuss or what you are discussing. Expand on the position you've taken. Why do you think it's bad to copyright software? Why do you think it's okay to copy copyrighted software? Why do you think the government has a role to play in medical technology? Why do you think the government should stay out of copywriting software? Whatever opinion you have, whatever research you've done, the middle of the paper is the time to expand that content. At the end of the paper, tell the reader what you just wrote. Summarize your thesis, summarize the opinion you presented, roll it up all into one paragraph, and that gives you a very concise beginning, middle, and end. Now, the bullet points here on this slide do not necessarily have to appear in this order. For example, in the beginning section of the paper, you may rearrange those a little bit. You may state the thesis second. You may introduce the position first. You don't have to go in that order. We should all know how to write a paragraph by now. If we don't, we can certainly fall back on the interwebs for a lot of resources. I've cited a source here that you can use to review or give yourself a refresher on how a paragraph is constructed. Take the time to read that, take the time to practice, and work on building good, properly constructed paragraphs to make the points in your paper. If you make an assertion, support it. I think texting is bad when you're driving because I got a ticket when I was texting while driving. Now, of course, I just did that in the first person. Hopefully you recognize that we're not writing in the first person, and you mentally corrected that. If you say something that's possibly controversial, fish are sentient beings because ... You need to provide evidence of that. Fish are sentient beings because this author caught a fish and it said, "Hello, please put me back in the lake." There you go. You've supported your opinion from a life experience. One of the biggest mistakes I see reading students' papers is that they wrote it once and then they walked away from it. That is not the way we build a properly constructed document for our employer. We revise, we reread, and we rework what we do. Now, I can tell if you wrote it from top to bottom and then gave up and uploaded it. I can tell if it has no flow. I can tell if it's not properly constructed. I can tell if you didn't start the paper until Sunday at 11:30 p.m. when it was due at midnight. So I strongly encourage you to take the time to work on these papers throughout the week. Submit revisions to yourself. Walk away from it. Read what you've written. Revise it. Move it around. Rewrite it if you have to. Some paragraphs will be rewritten. Some paragraphs will be just fine. And then one tip that I use is to read it backwards. If you read it backwards, you kind of hide the content, the meaning, but you will see things that you wouldn't otherwise see if you read it forwards. Particularly spelling and grammar will jump out at you if you read it backwards because you're not reading the content. It works very well. Give it a try. Sources. Simply Googling the writing prompt may be a starting point for finding sources, but certainly not a reliable way to get that done. We want you to cite sources that are reasonably authoritative. They don't have to be 100% scientific data, 100% peer-reviewed, certain ironclad sources, but they have to be reasonably sourced information that you put into your paper. I've given you some bullet points here. If someone is recognized in their field, they might be considered authoritative. If someone is historically reputable, in other words, they've been working in this field for a while and we're pretty sure they're not a fraud. If someone has been published in reputable outlets, again, reputable outlets is a judgment call. I'm not going to beat you up on that, but if you dig deep into the web and find conspiracy theories that are obviously on the fringe, you may have a difficult time passing those off as authoritative sources. We can do better than that. If a source is anonymous, forget it. You can't cite it. If you can't cite a person's name, don't use it. If no one takes responsibility for it, I don't care what site it's on, don't use it. Wikipedia. You should have learned in 6th grade, Wikipedia is not a source. Wikipedia is anonymously edited. It has a lot of political undertones that we won't go into here, that we will not argue about. However, the good news is there are a lot of articles on Wikipedia that are well sourced. What you need to do then is jump to the bottom, find the authoritative source, if there is one, go and read that and use that as your source, not the Wikipedia sanitized version of whatever was in that authoritative source. Go to the authoritative source, use that after thoroughly reading it and studying it as your source. Here are some general locations for good sources. Google Scholar, scholar.google.com, I believe is the URL. It will let you enter a search phrase just like regular Google does, but it limits the result set to supposedly reputable libraries and databases of information. CiteSeer is a database of published computer science research. If that becomes something you're researching, give CiteSeer a try. You may find something useful in there. .edu sites, right off the bat, edu implies that the source is generally an academic institution that has some reputable qualities to it. We can't say 100% all edu sites are authoritative, but it is a good place to start. I will say if you find a PowerPoint slide or a paper or a lecture from a professor at a reasonably reputable edu site, I would certainly consider that as an authoritative source. I'm not going to quibble about that. News sites, if you'd like to use CNN or Fox or MSNBC, if it is a news article, you can consider it authoritative. If it is an opinion piece, you need to be clear that you are citing or referencing someone else's opinion, which is great. You can use other people's opinion to support your opinion, as long as you are clear that's what you are doing. Our library has a vast array of databases of authoritative sources. Fire up the UC VPN, connect to our library, and use their databases as well. And then certainly there are many other reputable sites out there. There are technology websites, there are cybersecurity websites that have been in business for a long time that we all have come to depend on, that we can consider to be authoritative for the purposes of this class. This is not to say that if you're writing a paper for peer-reviewed publication that these are sources you might want to use, but these are okay sources for this class that we're using now. I have written a document on Blackboard going into a little more detail about authoritative sources. You should take a look at that. See if you have any questions about what I consider to be authoritative. This will help you a lot as you go forward in your career, because you're going to need to understand where to get information that can be trusted to provide to your employer. If you write a paper, if you write a report and deliver it to your employer, they're going to want to know where you got the information in that report. So make sure you understand the importance of authoritative sources. You will cite your sources. We will use MLA. This is not a disaster if you've used APA or some other format in other classes, not a problem. We know that there are automated tools online for generating citations. If you use Google Scholar, it will automatically generate a citation for you simply by opening up the search results and looking for the citation link. So a lot of this work is already done. Put all the citations at the bottom, numbered from 1, incremented by 1. In the body of the paper, simply refer to those citations by number. Here's an example of how to refer to a citation. Put the numeric citation value in square brackets immediately after the information that you lifted from that source. Now, you are perfectly okay with paraphrasing the information from the source. Actually, I want you to paraphrase. I don't want to see everything in quotation marks throughout your paper, because I want to know that you read it and that you can reword it a little bit and to put your interpretation into it. This number here means that the preceding information came from that source. It doesn't mean it was lifted word for word in a copy-paste operation. It means that it was read and somebody reworded it a little bit and put it into their speech. Let me point out here, we're not using the author. We're not referencing by author name. We're referencing by the numeric value we assigned to that source. Simply put it in square brackets. You'll be fine. I want you to cite when you take information or opinions from your source. And again, you will be paraphrasing that information and those opinions. If you have to copy and paste material from a source directly without editing it, do it sparingly, do it as little as possible, and be sure that you then immediately interpret that information in your own words. Do not use copying and pasting from your sources to make your points. You can use it as a starting point to build on and to discuss and to explain, but if you simply paste information from a source, I will ignore it unless you have interpreted it and given your spin on it. When you submit a paper, I will read it and I will annotate it using comments. I expect you then to study what I have given you and to improve on that in subsequent papers that you write. I will be using Microsoft Word and I will be adding comments to the document, and you can see they will appear here on the right. If you don't know how to view comments that are in a document, you can certainly look that up online to see how that works. I promise I will never criticize the position that you take. If you think that fish are sentient beings and you can provide information to support that opinion, I will certainly listen to what you have to say. I am here to read what you write and help you to become a critical thinker. I am not here to criticize your opinions. If we differ politically, if we differ socially, I'm fine with that. I want you to be comfortable in telling me what you want to tell me. So do not feel that you have to tell me what I want to hear. And please understand, I will probably never tell you my opinion on any of these topics, because I want you to feel no pressure when you write. If you want to discuss politics with me, if you want to discuss social issues with me, meet me at Chipotle, we'll have burritos and we'll discuss. But that will not be part of this class. When you quote someone, as I said earlier, keep it to a minimum. If you paste in an entire paragraph from an authoritative source and you simply put quotes around it, I will take off points. Keep your quotes to a minimum. When you do quote, immediately before or after, interpret that information. Don't use someone else's quote to make your point. Tell me why you quoted it. Tell me what it means. Tell me why it's important. Tell me how it supports what you think or maybe differs from what you think to put things into focus. More tips. Tell me at the beginning what you're going to tell me. Have a thesis statement. I want to know when I start reading your paper in the first couple paragraphs what I'm going to read. That's called a thesis statement. It should be in there in the introduction to the paper. Second bullet point, do your research, form an opinion, support the opinion. That's the purpose of most of the papers that you will write. Third bullet point, no profanity, no slang, no double entendres. You are writing professionally. You are writing for work. You are not creating a Reddit post. I don't want any profanity. I don't want any slang beyond technical slang, perhaps, if you think that's appropriate. But I'm not looking for dirty jokes. I'm not looking for crude phrases or anything that would possibly be offensive at work. Now, some of our opinions may be offensive at work in that people may disagree with us, but that's okay. Don't use rhetorical questions. One of the biggest mistakes students make when they write these papers is they write in the form of a question and then they don't answer the question. So I have, in recent past, decided that we will not use rhetorical questions at all. It just doesn't work for us. If you find yourself writing questions in your paper, rewrite the paper. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions about how to write a paper, please put them in the course FAQ under the discussion board on Blackboard, and we will be happy to answer them and discuss them for you. Thank you.